Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we're going to make some chicken tenders, homemade ranch, a salad, and we're going to whip up a key lime pie, like a fresh key lime pie. So no sweetened condensed milk, just cream in it. So let's actually start on our pie crust so we can have that chill in the freezer while we make it. So we're going to start off with 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs. You could also crush your own graham crackers if you want. Out. And then we're going to use a stick of melted butter, so a half a cup of melted butter. Let's start with our 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs. So we've got 1 and 2. Put it in here because I know if I leave it out of the box, I'm going to knock it over and graham cracker crumbs will go everywhere. And then we're going to add in a half a cup of granulated sugar. Kind of sweeten them up just a teensy bit. And then we're going to pour in our melted butter. So this again is a half a cup or 1 stick. We're going to give this a nice mix, and then we're going to press it into the bottom of our pie mold. Now, if you wanted to do them in ramekins, you could, or in, little pie tins if you have those. Or you could just skip one step and buy the pre-made graham cracker shell. But I was told by my daughter who requested this, so she said I had to make it extra thick with that because that's what she likes is the graham cracker crumb. So she really probably would want double this, but we've got to be reasonable. So let's add our mixed in graham cracker crumbs here. And then I'm going to get a parchment paper and we're going to press them in to the sides, and then we'll pop this in the freezer to chill while we prep up the rest of lunch. Let's get a piece of parchment paper here. And this is just makes it a little bit easier to press it in without having to get it all over. So we're just going to kind of firmly press it down. Now, you don't have to push it up on the edges at all like you would with a regular pie crust. This can just be all in the bottom. Just try to make it as even as possible. We've got a little bit. There we go. And then when this goes in the freezer, that butter in there is going to firm up, and that's going to give you that really delicious graham cracker crust to it. So I'm going to just pop it right here in my freezer. I'll put it on the top rack. And now that will chill. And while we are waiting for that to chill, let's prep our chicken for our fried chicken, and then we'll go back to making our filling for it. So we are going to be making fried chicken tenders. We're just going to do kind of like an everything season on them, but they'll be delicious. So let's start off with about 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to have to refill my bucket soon. I'm going to use... I always say I think I need to get like industrial size buckets with how much flour I use here. Okay, we've got about 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Now we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons. This is like a Mrs. Dash's everything seasoning. So there's about 1, about 2. We're going to add in about a tablespoon of paprika. This is going to give it a lovely kind of golden color, and it has a nice kind of mild savory. We're going to add in a tablespoon of onion powder. This will also give you that nice savory flavor to it. And then for the salt, we're going to add in some garlic salt. We're going to add in about a tablespoon of garlic salt. So we're going to use a bunch of good shakes around. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to take my fork and we are going to mix this up. And this is going to be the seasoned dredge for our chicken tenders. There we go. You want to make sure it's all mixed up. So you make sure you get it. You're going to have these little crumbs like they like to stick in the corner. Mix it in. We will add seasoned panko breadcrumbs to this. but we are going to do that after our first dredge. There we go. Then we are going to whip up our eggs in there. That way we'll have it ready. And then I'm going to trim up my chicken. But I like to have everything kind of done first before I touch the chicken. That way I don't have to be like, wash, wash, wash. Okay, so we've got 4 eggs here. And 3 may have done it, but I'm going to have extra because the worst thing is to run out of your egg wash or your dredge. I've done that a couple of times. And then you have to go and like make them batch midway. So we're going to whisk these eggs up. So let me pop these yolks, and you just want to have them mixed together. Try to make sure you get those yolks whipped into the whites so that you don't have any long stringy whites in there. There we go. And almost. Okay, that should be good. And I'm going to get my breadcrumbs ready. Now we're going to trim. I'm going to cut through and kind of butterfly each of my chicken breasts here and cut them in half to make them thinner. So this is a great way to turn them into a lot more than they are. I say chicken breasts nowadays are really, really fat. So you definitely need to kind of trim them up because they're huge, and that would just take forever to fry through, and you'd probably end up burning them before you had them cooked all the way through. Cut off any of the little fat that you see because that won't taste good. Get this one cut through. And then we're going to cut them into tenders. So just a little bit more strips. And I will say, you're going to start with your tenders and you're going to think, oh, they're the perfect size. They're going to go like twice the size because they get pretty big into our like there. So these look like perfect size. They're going to be giant when you're done with them just because that breading makes them grow. Here we go. And I kind of do have them like a little triangle. Makes them a little bit easier to dip. And we're going to be making some homemade ranch. So that will be delicious. Here. And now this one's a pretty big one. So I'm going to actually do this one in 3. But let me trim off this fat here because that will just be really chewy in our chicken tender. And we don't want that. So there was 1, 2, and 3. And then our last one, I can probably get, we're just going to get 2 out of that one. Okay. We have got our meat all cut up. Now we're going to do our dredge through. So we're going to go through our seasoned flour. And this is important because you really want to make sure you season it up well, because once we put the coating on, there's really no more seasoning you can add. So you can't really add more after you fry it up. So just always be sure to, I always say over season rather than under season, because you're going to think that you over seasoned and it's going to turn out perfect. And I will just say, because you've got a little bit of coating to season a big chunk of meat. We're just going to cover it up. And this is our first, the seasoned dredge on it, which will give it a nice flavor. And we're doing a savory one. Now, if you like spicy chicken, you could add some Cajun spices in, some cayenne pepper, and that would give you a nice like spicy flavor to it. This is my kind of like my everything, just good old, fried like chicken, little chicken tenders here. Really, they're just our homemade chicken nuggets. Although if you guys have ever seen a video on how chicken nuggets are made, it's kind of gross, like they blend them up into a paste. So these are much better. These are much tastier. And this is what my kids are used to, not chicken nuggets. Okay. Now I'm taking my clean hand. This is why you keep one clean, so you can add this in here. We're going to add about 1.5 cups of our panko breadcrumbs. You could also use regular breadcrumbs if you wanted. Let's mix it together. But panko gives you a nicer crunch on it. Now, if you also don't have breadcrumbs, you can crush up crackers. Those also work well for it. I've even seen it done My growing up, our nanny used to make them with cornflakes. So it's really, I don't know, it was weird. It was delicious, but she would use cornflakes in the second breading of it, and it would have like a really, really crunchy, you know, to it. Here we go. So into the egg wash, and see how it sticks onto the chicken because of that flour. That dredge helps it stick to it. It's like a glue, kind of makes a glue with it. And we'll get it coated up. And then I always kind of like pat it over there, give it a press it in. That helps kind of keep it stuck on our chicken because you want it to stay there versus to fall off. It's always so sad if you've fried up food and that breading comes off in the pan. Here we go.
You have a question? They've heard that cornstarch coating helps crisp it up. What's your opinion?
Yes. So cornstarch, it's going to give you a slightly different texture. It's going to give you that tempura texture. So that's what they use in a lot of like the Japanese, like cooking and whatnot. But that cornstarch it does give you a nice crispy edge too. But it's going to give you a lighter texture to it. It's really good if you want to use like a beer batter one, and you could use a little bit of cornstarch in there. You'll get a nice, like, really fluffy but crispy breading on it. Here we go. I've just never really used it in there because I will say I like what I do, and so I never messed with it. But I have done the cornstarch before when I've done some like Asian dishes where I've made like fritters and some like that, like I always say like that sweet chicken with that breading on it, for the orange chicken, sesame chicken, stuff like that. Here we go. And just a few more to whip up together. That's why I say your fingers sure do get messy. That's why I always say do it with just one hand. You always have to resist the urge to like dip with both or to switch hands. It took me a while to finally like train myself not to use my other hand, because then you're stuck with being like so covered that you can't do anything. And then you're like trying to like turn the sink on. There we go. And push it down.
Our sink has a lever.
I know. Well, but not all sinks were like that. Or you could have like my mom. She always does all this fancy stuff, and I'm always like, don't. But she has one of those automatic sinks that you're supposed to like wave, and it turns on for you. Doesn't ever work. I hate the sink. I was trying to figure out how to turn her sink on, and I'm like sitting here pushing all the buttons, switching it up, and I'm like, this never works. And then she finally got her to admit it. She goes, yeah, I'll never put that in again. And I was like, I told you, you spent all that money on a bougie sink and it doesn't work. I was like, it's like when you go to the bathroom and they have those automatic sinks, like 90% of the time they don't work. So stick with the traditional. I got our last one breaded and dredged now. I can go wash. Here we go. Push it down. We've got, look at this big old tray. Let's get these washed. I'll give myself a nice scrub, a dub over here. I will say, they do coat you well. Okay. So we've got our chicken all dredged up and ready to go. We can start heating up our oil to fry up our chicken. So we're just using olive oil here. I'm not going to heat it up. I like to keep it around a good 350 degrees so that it does like a perfect cook of the chicken. If you make your oil too hot, you're going to burn your chicken before you cook it through. And plus olive oil has like a temperature of like, I want to say 400 or 500, its smoke point here. But you could use whatever oil you want. You don't need to fill up your pan to where it's overflowing. I just do a kind of a coating on the bottom. When you add the chicken in, it will raise it up. And then you might need to add a little bit more towards the end, but you don't need to go with a whole bunch. It doesn't need to be soaked in the oil for you to use it. Otherwise, like, you'll be wasting so much oil. Okay, let me clean off our countertop right here real quick. We'll move our chicken out of the way. Always gets a little bit messy when we do our breading and our dredging. And then we're going to go work on our key lime pie. Got a lot of juicing to do. I just want to clean this area up first. That way, when we're ready to chop up our veggies, we'll be ready. Okay, I'm going to give myself one last good wash. Because now, going into our lime juice. Okay.
You got a comment that they love your countertops. What are they?
These are quartz, and I picked out the quartz to look kind of like a Carrera marble. Marble's like terrible for in kitchens because it stains really easy and it's a lot of maintenance. So quartz doesn't stain, but I looked for that nice veining and I love it. Okay, let's get our base for our key lime pie made. So we're going to start off with 3/4 a cup of sugar. I'm going to put it in here. We're going to be adding some more ingredients in there in just a second. Now, we're going to use some zest and some lime juice, and I'm also going to be using some key lime juice. Takes out the work because there's a lot of lime juice you need in this. So let's first start with the zest because it's really hard to zest a lemon or a lemon or a lime after you do it. So we're going to zest these 3 limes. And I am using it's like what I call it's a Parmesan grater, but it is the best zester ever. Makes them like the perfect size. So I have like this other zester, but I feel like it makes more like a swirl than a zest. And this is really easy to use. So we're going to zest up these 3 limes, then we're going to juice them, and then we're going to do the rest with our key lime juice. Which, if you didn't know what a key lime is, they're actually like a kind of like a hybrid between a lime and a mandarin orange. So they are sweet, sweeter than a regular lime, but they still have that kind of tartness that the lime has. Here we go. But when my oldest daughter has been asking for these for nonstop since our Florida trip. And I was like, okay. We looked at the store a couple weeks ago and they were sold out of key lime juice and they didn't even have key lime. So I was like, oh, there's no way I can make it. Otherwise, it won't be a key lime. It will just be a lime one. But she is going to be very, very happy. There we go. So we're aiming for about 2 tablespoons of lime zest in here. And you can see it's getting a nice green flavor to it. Now, our key lime pie is not going to be like neon green like you see at a lot of places because we're not going to add any food coloring to it because there's just no need. There's times where I'm like food coloring is great, like frosting on a cake, but in a key lime pie, it can be that pale yellow and it's just as good. Okay, we're almost done with this. We can also, there we go. So we've got about our 2 tablespoons of lime zest. Let me grab a little knife here. We're going to cut our limes. We're going to juice them, and then we're going to finish up the rest of the way to get to about a cup of lime juice. And you could juice all of your limes on your own for that cup, but a cup takes about 18 to 20 limes. That's a lot of juicing. So I do a little bit to give you that nice fresh thing, get a little bit of that pulp in there. And then I finish it off with this key lime stuff because it's actually pretty good. I mean, is it the same as using fresh? No, but let's be real here. Who wants to juice 18 to 20 limes, let alone the cost of juicing 18 to 20 limes would probably be like 10 to 15 bucks. Or you could buy this bottle here and use some of that. But don't use just straight up lime juice. Get the key lime juice. That's the key. Okay. So we're going to get these all juiced up. You can see how little I made. We'd be here for hours if I had to juice them myself. I would feel, I'm sure down in Florida they actually have people who like juice them themselves. That would be a miserable job. Is juicing. Okay, here's these like 300 limes, juice them up. Yeah. But if you use a little bit of lime juice and then finish it off, it gives you that kind of fresher, more homemade lime juice flavor. Oh, lost this guy in there. Let's give this a squeeze out. Okay, so those 3 limes didn't even get us a fourth of a cup. So we'll do the rest with our key lime juice. And okay. And we're gonna need about a cup of this. So I'm gonna put it there so I can see the line. Doesn't look quite as pretty as mine, does it? But it will be delicious. Okay, we're gonna add this into here with our sugar and our lemon or our lime zest. And then we are going to add in a half a cup of cornstarch. So this is going to make the kind of curd of it here. Let's get our oil. I just saw this over here. So let's get this frying. I'm going to turn it down to low so that our oil is nice and hot, but we're going to turn it down to low. There we go. Nice sizzle on it. Oh, looks like I put a little flour over the edge. I'm going to try to get half my chicken tenders in here, but I don't know if I can do that. We'll just do 6 at a time. I'm going to get a little bit of paper towel here because I've got my flour smoking underneath here. There we go. Add a little here. So when you heat your oil up nice and hot, make sure you turn it down because you don't want to cook your chicken on high. So if you put it in there, as soon as you put the chicken in it, that chicken's going to bring your temperature of your oil down. And then just keep it at a nice medium thing so that it doesn't get like you'll burn your chicken if you have it too high. So let's add in our cornstarch here. So this is like an old school key lime pie. There's so many ways. I didn't have evaporated milk, so we're doing cornstarch and heavy cream, which will give you a really creamy, velvety texture to it. So it's a little different, but has the same great flavors. This is how I make my lemon curd too. So we're gonna turn this on and we're gonna stir it until it starts to dissolve and thicken up. There we go. Then we're gonna add in 1.5 cups of cream, let it thicken, and then about 4 tablespoons of butter. And this is going to be our nice, lovely base for our key lime pie. And it will be extra tangy and limey with our key lime and our fresh lime juice and the lime zest. Don't forget to add the zest. It adds so much flavor to it, especially when you're having something like this that isn't like a completely baked out thing. It's so good.
You have a question. Do any of the kids enjoy cooking or baking?
They actually are like starting to do it in there. My daughter, my son, Evie and Torn, have asked if they could start a channel and start streaming them baking. And I said, yeah, sure, we could definitely work into that. I said, you're gonna have to learn, but I'd love for you guys to try it and do it. So we're getting in the middle of setting them up, but it's going to be Torrance Tasty Treats and Evie's Bake Shop because they do like to cook and they like to do things. So I think I'm excited for them to try, like branch out. All right, let's get our chicken. Nice golden crispy chicken here. I'm going to now smidge it up just a little bit. There, we're flipping them all over. And see this nice golden orange color to it? You get that from the paprika that you add into the mix. That gives you that rich golden color with like all the flavor. So I'm gonna grab my paper towels over here. We're gonna line our baking sheet so that when these first batches cooked through, we're going to put them on here to like soak up that grease. You could also put them on like a cooking cooling rack, one of those cooling things, and they could crisp up there. Just don't lay them just on a flat plain surface by themselves. Otherwise they won't, they'll get soggy, and then you won't have that nice crispiness all around, and that's what you want. Okay, I've got that stirring. I can measure out my cream here. So we'll have that ready. We need to thicken up a little bit before we add the cream in. So we're going to use 1.5 cups of cream. And this is in place of using like a sweetened condensed milk. So this is going to give you a really fresh, lush cream flavor to it. It's going to be so good. Let me get the paper towel, wipe this up over here. And while we wait for this to thicken, because the cornstarch takes a little bit, but resist the urge to put it on high, because you want it to slowly thicken versus like go really fast, burn on the bottom and seize. So just kind of resist the urge to put it on too high to make it boil faster. Okay, while that is thickening, we'll stir it every now and then. Let's make our homemade ranch dressing, which we'll be using for the chicken as well as for our salad. Kind of just goes well together. Okay, we're going to start off with about a cup of mayo. I'm just going to use up whatever here. If we have a little bit less, then we'll opt there. But we're going to do around a cup of mayonnaise, and then we're going to do a cup of buttermilk. So I had some buttermilk left over, and I always love to make buttermilk ranch with it. I'm going to grab myself a second jar. I thought there was more mayo in here, but this isn't even a half a cup. So I've got my second jar in here. Perfect. I'm going to give my little stir. And here, I will say, when you are making things with mayo and it's coming up the start of the summer, go out and buy new mayo, because if it's been sitting in your fridge since last summer, it's going to be awful. Mayo is one of those things that soak up all of the flavors in your fridge. And even though it might not be expired, it's going to have a funky taste. I've always found it to be like that. We're going to add in a cup of buttermilk. I'm just using my measuring cup here so I know where to stop pouring.
You have a question? Can you go over the breading for the chicken?
Yes. So the breading for the chicken is super, super simple. We use all-purpose flour. Then we added in about 2 tablespoons of the seasoned blend, which is the same as Mrs. Dash's. It's an everything blend. A tablespoon of paprika, a tablespoon of onion powder, and then about a tablespoon of garlic salt. So that seasoned up our dredge. And then we mix up some eggs, 4 eggs, put them in there. And then you add, after you've dredged all of your chicken, you add about a cup to a cup and a half of panko breadcrumbs to your leftover dredge for the second coating. So it's delicious. And it's why my kids love it. When they found out they were having chicken nuggets today, or chicken tenders, I call them nuggets, but they're tenders, they were very excited because this is one of their favorite meals. Especially my son, my 13-year-old son, he loves these. But you see, beautiful golden. Make sure you lay it oil side down after you take it out. That's going to help keep it nice and crispy. Let's see. That one looks like it's ready. Beautiful. You can even see the spices in there as they like cook up. Okay, well, let's get our next set in. I'm hoping I can get all of these in here. And again, I have mine cooking on low and slow. That if you cook it really fast, what will happen is you'll get this nice golden crust. And then you think you're done, and then you cut into it and you'll have raw right in the middle. So go low and slow. That way, when you get your golden crust, you'll have it cooked all the way through. Let's get this out of the way. Now, I'm going to give our, starting to thicken up over here. So we're going to give it a nice little stir. Put over there. And so with this, with the cornstarch, it's going to start thickening up. Once it starts to thicken up, it thickens up pretty fast. So we're going to keep stirring it until it comes into this nice gel. And then we're going to add in our cream, and that will just make this kind of lovely key lime curd. And then after you add in your cream and you let it thicken up again, then you'll stir in some butter and we'll let it melt in there. There we go. But it's a constant stir, because if you don't, what'll happen is it will stick to the bottom of your pan and it will cause it to burn, and you don't want that. And even turn it down a smidge, so you can see it's starting to thicken up right now. And it kind of starts in chunks, and then eventually it will thicken up all the way through. There we go. This is just going to make a delicious key lime pie. I'm gonna pop that off mine. There we go. Okay. As you see, it's getting even thicker and thicker to just through. And then we'll add in 1.5 cups of heavy cream. And that is going to be that nice velvety, rich, creamy flavor to it. So most recipes use, sweetened condensed milk, or this one, we're going to use heavy cream, and it's going to be so much better. Okay. We've got this. Now we're going to add in our 1.5 cups of heavy cream. Just getting it nice and thick. Now we're going to pour this in little by little. There we go. And stir it. And that cornstarch will just start thickening up. And this is going to be into this nice kind of velvety, creamy curd. You see how it's thickening up so much right now? And this is where, if you wanted to add in that splash of food coloring to give you that really bright green color, you could, but you don't need to.
For substituting out the condensed milk, what's the ratio for that?
So if you wanted to put the condensed milk back in instead of the heavy cream.
No, what did you substitute?
Oh, so I used heavy cream, 1.5 cups of heavy cream into this thing. So the recipe is a little bit different, because we're using cornstarch. We're not using egg yolks in here to make a curd. So it's a completely different one than the sweetened condensed milk one. Okay, we've got this. Now we need to add in 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to turn this down really low, and we're going to let that butter melt into it. So this is going to give you a lovely kind of rich flavor to it, that velvety smooth. And it's going to give the curd a little bit more of a smooth flavor. There we go. And I'm actually going to get out my whisk here so I can whisk it a little bit smoother now that we've got that cornstarch thickening. There we go. But this is going to be delicious, but it's almost there. And what happens is when this cools, it's going to thicken up even more and kind of firm up into that nice kind of soft gel. But I'm going to whisk it until I have all of that butter melted in. There we go. And you can see the nice lime zest in there. We're going to add a little bit more on top when we dress it for our key lime pie. And then we're going to check on our fried chicken in just a second. Look at that beautiful kind of creamy curd. I'm going to take it off the heat now, and we're going to just let it sit, and I'll stir it there every so often. Let's check on our chicken, see if it's ready to flip. Ooh, it is. Beautiful. But you see how we go nice and low and slow, and it can cook and get nice and golden brown without burning. Okay. Let's finish up our ranch dressing here. So we put in our whole packet of ranch powder. So we had a cup of mayo, a cup of buttermilk. So this is that old school buttermilk ranch, so good. We used to talk about it our high school. My sister and I always still talk about our our high school had the best buttermilk ranch. And I don't know what they used, but it was amazing that we still talk about it, gosh, like 20 years later. But it was so good. They had the best. Okay. And this is what you're going to dip your chicken into, because who doesn't love to dip their chicken into the buttermilk ranch? But it is nice and thick and rich and creamy, and that buttermilk gives it that kind of savory tartness to it. Let's whip up our salad here. So now you could even do this the way I always like to do it, is you put the chicken tenders on the salad, so it's like a fried chicken salad. Delicious. Now my kids don't eat it that way. I'm like, you guys got to eat the salad, and they cover it in like a gallon of ranch. I mean, I do too, but they'll eat the salad with a hefty serving of ranch. And we get here. We got it there. Let's get out there. So in our family, we have a very big controversy. My girls, not including me, I do not like it, like the leafy parts. I, my husband, and everybody else who is insane of mine love the nice crispy green parts. And it's so funny. So when I make a salad, I will pick out the leafy green parts for my two girls, because for some reason that is their favorite, but they don't like a spring mix salad. It has to be, a romaine thing there. But me, I love the crunchy lettuce, the crisp, firm lettuce. Okay, we're gonna add in, we've got these sweet tiki tomatoes. They're super cool looking. They're like purple and orange. They've got a bit more sweetness, but they're delicious. Evie is in like love with them, but they're sweeter than a regular tomato, and they have just so much flavor. And now we're gonna add in some, this is an English cucumber. We don't need all of it. But English cucumbers have a very delicate skin, so they're very similar to baby cucumbers. Love them in salad. You don't have to peel them because it's a tender skin on them. So I bought these cucumbers for my garden, although I did that last year, and they weren't English cucumbers when they came out. Okay, we've got our cucumbers.
Probably because you planted them in Tennessee.
Yeah, nothing. Tennessee has the worst soil ever. It is like clay, and you can literally.
I meant because then they're not English.
Oh, you caught in there. I thought you were talking about how terrible the soil here is. As a kid, I used to dig holes in my parents' backyard and would dig up lumps of clay and create little pottery and little things out of it. It's so it's funny. I even decided to try to create my own kiln once using my mom's Le Creuset pot. I got in so much trouble, and that Le Creuset pot is still black to this day, but she won't get rid of it because of the good memories. She's had it since like the early 70s, but it is black on the inside because I put paper in there and I was burning and I was going to fire up my kiln. The things we did in the 90s that would not fly today. Okay. Let's whisk this up. I'm going to get out our pie crust that has been chilling. Just want to try to get this nice and smooth. There we go. And then we're going to add a little bit of lime zest on top of it to give you that nice kind of pretty look. But let me grab our chilled key lime pie. Remember, we made our crust using 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs, a half a cup of sugar, and a half a cup of melted butter. So I'm just gonna cream this up. We're gonna try to do really, there we go. And then we're gonna add this. You can see all of that, the bits of those key lime zest in there. Beautiful. And now we're going to give it a good shake out to kind of cover the edges. Now this has to chill before you can enjoy it, but it doesn't, you'll pop it in the fridge and in about an hour it should be firmed up. And you want to eat it nice and cold anyways. We're just take a little bit more lime zest over the top, gives you a bit more bright green. pop to it. But this is going to be amazing. And it's also perfect for like the summertime, I will say. So our beautiful key lime pie made using cream, not condensed milk. And it is just going to give you a really smooth, velvety, fresh flavor. It won't be overly sweet like some key lime pies are super sweet. It has that perfect balance between the sweet and like the tartness of it. But let's plate up our lunch. Okay. Our beautiful chicken tenders there. Let me grab a tong for our salad. So we've got our nice salad, which I'm going to have like 90% of my plate. It'll be so good. And then we're going to put our chicken tenders on. So we'll do 3 chicken tenders. And then the star of the show, it really should just be buttermilk ranch because everyone loves it. So we got our salad, has a nice little drizzle of buttermilk ranch. And then I always put a little on the side for my chicken to dip in. But guys, this is going to be amazing. We have our crispy pan-fried chicken tenders that we seasoned up with, some Mrs. Dash's, onion powder, paprika, and we added some panko breadcrumbs, and we just crisped them up so they're just lovely. We have our fresh garden salad with our homemade buttermilk ranch dressing. So good. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our recipes to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate these recipes at home, you can go find that link or go to that link, search for that video, and recook again with me at home. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us.